Hey, welcome to the Obvious Podcast. My name is Sonny Macon.
And I'm Peter Daiga, President and CEO at ABC Florida East Coast Chapter.
You are listening or watching to the Obvious Podcast, where all opinions expressed are our own unless we say otherwise.
Love the show? Subscribe on any major podcast platform or watch us in action on YouTube. Follow the Obvious Podcast on TikTok, Instagram, X, and Truth Social. All the links you need are in the show notes. And you can reach out to us anytime at theobvious@abceastflorida.com. If you're enjoying the ride, help others find us by leaving a review wherever you listen. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, Peter. Here we are, another episode. So you probably don't know this, but I've had a love-hate relationship with the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland since high school.
Okay.
Right? I found out what it was in high school. I thought it was so cool. I really wanted to go there. And then in the last few years, all I hear are like these woke liberals talking about how people need to be eating insects and stop eating steak.
Yeah, it was out of there that came from.
All that nonsense came out of Davos, right? And it's just like...
This isn't part of the what's the cabal, the underground shadow, that people talk about. Is that part of that?
No, could be. You could argue that it's part of the Pentemmerate. We should play that clip from that movie that I love. But so I saw a clip. So you heard of the company Citadel, which is this huge financial services firm. Most stock transactions, somehow Citadel is involved, whether in processing it or behind the scenes. Buying or selling of shares, multi-billion dollar company. It's run by a guy named Ken Griffin, who founded the company. Citadel used to be headquartered in Chicago and moved their entire headquarters to Miami.
We could do a whole show on that.
We could do a whole show on that.
Actually, I've seen some like YouTube or some things on. You've probably seen them too.
Oh yeah.
That whole movement or effort.
Yep.
And really, the online trading has kind of made all that possible. It's not like on the floor and written pieces of paper.
Oh yeah, from those old days. Yeah.
So, but anyway, that world is changing.
Oh, dramatically. But it's all moving here, and there's the whole. They started this a few years ago in terms of rebranding West Palm Beach as Wall Street South.
Yeah. They're moving here because they like the weather, Sonny? No.
No, they're moving here because they like the taxes. They like the lack of regulation. They like the
so they can get away with murder.
Yeah, exactly. That's what they'll tell you, right? And it's insane. A friend of mine, I'm going to just share this quick story with you. A friend of mine was just offered a job in Manhattan, making, I think the base salary that he was offered was $1.2 million plus bonuses, and he didn't take it. Because just off the top, he said 700,000 of that was going to go into just state, county, and local taxes, income taxes.
Wow.
700,000 on a 1.2 salary, or 650, I think it was. It's something. It was over 50%.
I want to make a side comment.
Yeah.
I got a statement this morning about the hotel that we'll be staying at when we go to ABC National's convention.
In
Salt Lake City.
In Salt Lake City, okay.
And I don't think I've ever seen this before, but God bless them, because I don't know if I've ever told you, one of my first acts as king would be making gas stations, because I've always wondered, why do gas stations, the only place exempt from, you go to any other service, a restaurant or something.
Oh, yeah. They tell you what the taxes are.
You see the tax on your bill. Why is it at the gas station you don't see the tax? It's just here's what you're paying.
Great question.
Why don't they separate it out? And one of my first acts as king would be requiring gas receipts to show you how much is for the gas and how much is going to the government. So I get this statement from the hotel, and I don't think I've ever seen this. Over 8% tax for the city, over 7% tax for the state.
Wow.
3% fee here, 2% fee there, all these local,
Wow.
I mean, it was almost 20,
Bed
north
tax,
of 20, bed tax, right? It was north of 20% that was being paid. Anyway, it just, your comment kind of, made me think of that. And these things have impacts, right?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
in your friend's case, he decided not to move there.
Yep. He's like, what's the point of working? Because he's going to have to work his tail off to make that money. And what's the point of working if I'm going to give away 52% of my income just in income taxes? Forget the cost of living.
Hasn't California enacted some billionaires tax, or going to, or something? Like the billionaires, even
the guys from Google,
all the lefties,
the guys from Google left. Zuckerberg left Meta. He just bought a house in Miami. Yeah. But that tax is insane, because that tax is, one, it's retroactive. to January 1st. So you would have had to move by January 1st of this year. And number
That
two,
will be challenged.
right? Because it hasn't even passed yet, and they're making it retroactive.
Right.
And number two, they're trying to tax. So if your company has gone public and you're a founder, you have all the stock, but it's only paper money, right? Because you haven't gone public, you haven't sold it yet. Yeah. They're trying to tax that valuation.
Unbelievable.
So I'm like, who the
New
hell's
York, I think, is talking about something similar. Mandami.
Well, he wants to go to like 9.5% property tax.
Anyway, you want to play a clip, which is a phenomenal clip.
I want to play a
Back
clip.
to the background. This is the head of.
This is Ken Griffin, the head of Citadel, the founder of Citadel, talking at the World Economic Forum. So I'm going to play this for our audience.
Mm-hmm.
How painful it was each and every day under the Biden administration to look at what new crazy proposal was being put into place to solve a problem that didn't even exist. I mean, our constant friction at Citadel with the government across umpteen different aspects of our business was exhausting. And to have that literally end on one day, Election Day, just gives you so much energy as an entrepreneur to go back and build your damn business. So the biggest sea change I've seen across American executives has been just like the giant sigh of relief. I can now go and focus on building my business. And that prior administration, we happen to be a creditor of Spirit. Their merger with JetBlue was stopped. Spirit's in bankruptcy today. There were so many decisions that were so poorly thought out in terms of economic consequences. It cost the U.S. economy dearly. I cannot emphasize that enough. And so the Trump administration is making slow progress on deregulation thus far, but the end of the regulatory onslaught has been just an extraordinary boom for American business.
I remember seeing that on the nightly news.
You saw that on the nightly news?
No, that's a joke. That's a joke. Did not see that on the nightly news.
Oh my gosh!
It was nightly news worthy.
Right.
A little clip of that. I
mean, get ready for your bell.
So, I could have done the bell like minutes ago. But
right.
Let's do it.
But yeah,
I mean,
look, we can get into why we could talk about why there was such a, as Ken Griffin calls it, an onslaught of bad regulations that came through the Trump administration. But
talking about this, by the way, back when it was happening, that would have been nice.
That's a great question.
Not just after.
That's a great question.
Leaders got to talk when, not just when it's safe.
That's a great question.
But any event, still lessons to be learned, even if it is in retrospect.
Yeah, because you know what? At some point, this president will leave, and it'll be it'll be a different Democrat again there.
No doubt about it.
And they're going to bring on the same people that were running Biden's administration, and this thing will restart.
Right.
And we'll go through this pendulum again.
They might be out of college by then.
Singing their yoga chants. I wanted to talk about this topic because as ABC, this is one of the things that we do so well, right? And I certainly mean this at our level. I certainly mean this at the state level, and I certainly mean this at the national level, because there is an onslaught of regulation that comes from politicians who have never had a real job, who have never worked in the private sector.
Right.
A lot of these guys are on the national scene.
Right. And there's two ways you can respond to that.
Yep.
One is to hell with the experts, or to hell with we're just going to do it because philosophically or politically, we're getting at some social engineering objective that we have, or which is where we're constantly trying to position ABC as. You might actually say, okay, before we actually do this, let's reach out to the experts and ask. Impact.
Go back to your first point, because I want to make this clear for our audience. What you're really saying is, what you're really answering is, why would the previous administration do what it did in terms of regulation? Because it clearly made no sense to Ken Griffin, who's an unbelievably bright guy.
Right.
Super successful.
Well, it's clear. It's clear why.
So your point about social engineering, I think that was a brilliant point. I want you to make that, and I want you to make it slowly so the audience understands.
It's clear, because A, the rich don't pay their fair share. B, the world was ending by economic or environmental collapse. We just, we had to we had to do away with oil and force electric cars on everybody. And C, China's awesome.
Right.
And whatever we can do to support them and their advancement.
Their development, yeah.
Their development. Right. I mean, this is why.
I mean, they still consider China for...
why we had to do these things under Biden.
So...
and see, they know better. They're the experts, quote unquote.
The bureaucrat's the expert, not the guy running the business.
Right. Not to my point, which is to actually stop, slow down. Let's actually call in and let's see if it's construction related, the leaders in that field. If it's investment related, the leaders in that field, and ask them, how is all this regulation impacting you? So, but you gotta actually care about that first, Sonny.
That's a great point.
You actually got to care about that.
You got to care about that. I mean, not that we want you to lead by caring, but leadership needs to be based on facts. But if facts are irrelevant and facts be damned, his point about JetBlue and Spirit going into bankruptcy and the impact that has on the American consumer, there's a real price to be paid for bad regulation and overregulation, right? Yeah. And it's paid by us.
I think you've made the point before, for example, when it comes to gas or oil. Mm-hmm. I don't think for 4 years we heard anything about, all these things impacting gas going up. And it went as high as, I think I'd mentioned before, I'd done some research, 492, was the height in somewhere around the year 2022 in Biden's administration. That's the average.
California was at $8, $9 a gallon.
So, no talk ever about that. But, now all of a sudden we got some speculation going on because of,
the Iran issue?
Yeah. And it's, it's the front of every news article.
Oh yeah, gas is going up. And I was like, where were you when it was going down? Right.
Or this is the point I'm trying to make. Where were you in the previous 4 years when it was going up?
When it was going up.
You didn't really care about it then, and that's because they got political agendas, quite frankly.
So it's social engineering at the cost of American business and the American economy.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
To me, that's probably the most dangerous.
The American middle class, quite frankly, which is the one that suffers under all this, right? You built an economy that's not as strong,
because the rich don't
not as competitive.
Yeah.
You're not having as much creativity and ingenuity being, succeeding, and encouraging that. Who suffers? The rich don't suffer. The government bureaucrats don't suffer because they've got all these cush programs, right?
Yeah,
flying around on their government jets. Mm-hmm. So they're kind of in the same class. Anyway, a very powerful statement by this guy at the World Economic Forum.
Very powerful. And for him to say that it stopped on day one, right? Just that it stopped on election day.
That's phenomenal. Day one.
That tells you, to your point, leadership matters.
Leadership matters. Always has.
And so I really wanted to kind of communicate that this is really what we do better than anybody out there in this marketplace, right? The idea that this is what we fight, the amount of lawsuits we had under the previous administration trying to stop the bad policies and the bad regulations was nuts. And we talked about this all the time. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I know the guys in D.C. who, for ABC National, they talk about it all the time. How,
I'm going to make a case for one of those regulations that, quite frankly, is the most troubling and remaining impactful one in a negative sense to our industry, which we don't quite understand why this administration has not acted on it. But reversing the project labor agreement executive order that the previous administration had, and for some reason this administration hasn't done that, and you could argue a lot of different reasons why, but we certainly would like to see that. So, Mr. President, if you're listening.
Can you explain the impact? Can you explain the impact of the PLA and what that actually does to our audience?
I mean, sure. It's been like a volley back and forth over the years, going all the way back to maybe Bush. I don't know. Senior, right? Hell, it might go back before that. But anyway, a project labor agreement is something that basically says, and by the way, the unions will dispute this, but I'll explain why it's basically true. That says you have to be a union contractor in order to bid on a project. So we tend to see them in Florida and other parts of the country, although they're more common in more union strong or states where unions are a larger percentage of the workforce. In Florida, they're less than 3% of the workforce. People don't realize that. They might think it's 50. They might think it's 60. It's 3%. So that's important, by the way. And we're not just saying that because, we like to talk about how awesome right to work is, and when you give workers that right, how they choose freely, not to affiliate with a union. they still have the right to organize if they're not happy or not treated fairly, but they choose not to where they actually have that choice. So,
by the way, the number of Florida legislators that I've had this conversation with, and I've told them about the 3%
have no idea.
They have no idea. They're
no
stunned.
idea. They are stunned.
They're absolutely stunned.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously in states like ours, PLAs are not as prevalent, but we still see them on large government projects for some reason. You know, the unions are successful in some way in arguing that somehow it's fair to require bidders to be what are in essence only represented by 3% of the workforce.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of the biggest friggin' ripoffs and quota programs, if you will, in existence.
Yep.
You know, so, and I've often said in my, we've talked a little bit about my background. You know, I've been in government affairs in this chapter for a long time. We would use the argument that if we came to you and said that only non-union contractors can bid, you would laugh us out of your office.
Yep.
You know, so I don't know why the opposite somehow is an okay, public policy to kind of pursue. So, in essence, presidents have always issued an executive order requiring project labor agreements on federal projects. You know, and again, unions will dispute the fact that you don't really have to be a union contractor to bid, and that's technically true.
Yep.
You just have to agree to sign a collective bargaining agreement after you win.
Which is insane.
Which is in essence the same thing, right? Because you're not going to bid on a project hoping to win. The reason you bid, if you're a non-union contractor and you're going to be required to become a union contractor once you win the job. So in essence, it's not inaccurate for us to say PLAs kind of require you to be a union contractor. Those are the ones, you know.
But the end result of PLAs is just they are.
The end result is less competition, which is to our point. Right. We're a pro-competition, pro-meritocracy. It's going to cost it does, in fact, according to studies and also results from bids, ends up bumping up significantly, you know, the cost of these projects. So anyway, the volley over the years has been back and forth.
And
the Republican
cost is paid for by the taxpayer,
of course, because these are federal projects.
Federal
or it's either paid by the taxpayer or you get less of whatever it is you're building.
Yeah.
You know, that's another opposite way or a flip side of the coin to look at something. If you've got X number of dollars to spend to build, let's use, because it's kind of a pertinent topic right now, X number of missiles or X number of ships.
Yeah.
And you've got that budget amount. And if you can only get 80% or 70% of that, you're going to get less missiles or less ships, as opposed to if you didn't have the PLA. So, but it's a volley back and forth. Democrat presidents would come in and issue an executive order requiring it. Republicans would come in, rescinding that executive order, issuing a executive order freeing federal fund. And for the first time in that volley, this Republican president has not rescinded the previous PLA.
And we're all kind of like wondering why.
Well, yeah, and the only real, and I'm hoping this is the only reason why is because it is subject of a lawsuit. So ABC is suing the federal government because we'd like once and for all to end the executive order back and forth and get a court to say it's illegal and then end the whole volley back and forth. And it could be, you could make an argument that the administration is just not going to do it because it's a pending court case. Right. That's the most charitable, I think, interpretation, if you will, of that. So,
all right. Well,
how did we get on PLAs?
We were talking about.
Happy to talk any time about these things that impact ABC members. Anybody who
you were talking about like the regulations one of the regulations that we're still dealing with, even though we have a new administration, is that one. That's how
we want to be fair, right? We give credit an awful lot to this administration because we think their policies
they've dropped the ball on this one.
They have dropped the ball on this one, in our opinion. So anyway, pray for a.
If anybody from the administration is listening.
Yes, if anybody's listening, but pray for a favorable outcome in the court.
Or yoga chant for a prayer.
Or your yoga chant if you're not into prayer. That's good. So it's going to become one of our favorites.
I know.
So anyway.
Well, we are out
Thanks
of time.
for sharing that clip. Yeah, that was amazing.
Absolutely. And again, leadership matters, right? And again, it's not just about the president. You just can't think about who's president. You got to think about the administrations they're bringing in and the administrations they built. You know, everybody's kind of raving about what a great job Marco Rubio has done as Secretary of State. I was listening to his predecessor under the last administration, Anthony Perkins. I can't even think of his last name, but it's Anthony something. He's on CNBC trying to take credit for the Iran deal, you know, and how great they were in kind of laying the groundwork for the Iran deal. This is before the bombing had started. And, we contained it. And I'm just like, what? You were one of the worst secretaries of state there was. And the guy, on CNBC, didn't challenge him at all. Just let him talk, right? Yeah. And then, well, of course, if it was a right winger, they would have been all over that. And I just wanted to share that with you because it's not just our opinion. This is American businesses are telling you this administration is good for business.
Welcome to Miami.
Welcome to Miami, Citadel. We're happy to have you here.
So,
all right. So, all right. Go ahead, Peter.
all right. Well, we thank you for listening and honoring us with your time as always. We look forward to sharing another episode with you next Friday.
For comments, send us an email at theobvious@abceastflorida.com.
Until then, ciao.
Take care.